So now to Brian. Let me introduce Brian. So first of all, I'd like to say Brian and I have known each other for about 2 years now. It's a little less than 2 years, and it all kind of started actually when an email that he and a colleague of his at Rochester sent an email that said, we heard about your custom speech service. We're really interested what can happen. And then that's where our partnership started. And we've been collaborating regularly ever since on this particular project. The service is now being used regularly at Rochester. And he can talk to that. So Brian is the Associate Director for the Center of Access Technology at the National Technical Institute for the Deaf at Rochester Institute of Technology. Now that's a mouthful. The National Technical Institute for the Deaf is one of the 9 colleges at Rochester. And he is involved in a number of projects around accessibility, which he will share with us today, so I won't talk about those. He's also an associate professor and lead faculty in the Mobile Application Development Program at that institute and principal investigator on a recent careers grant. So Brian has some incredible stories. It's been great working with him, and I hope he has a chance to share some of the stories because some of them are really powerful stories. So Brian, it's your show. You take it away.
Thank you very much, Will. You saved me about 5 minutes. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm happy, I'm honored to be here today to talk with you. It's been a cool week for me. Personally, the conference was great, and I have been just excited and now I'm exhausted. But I can't wait to see how we go with the custom speech service and see where it leads. And the work that Will and I have done together is still a work in progress. And I'm really looking forward to continued work in the future and see what it brings. Okay. So how's it going? Okay? Yeah. All right. All right. It's the mic. Let's blame it on that. Okay. When Will asked me to give a presentation, and I thought long and hard about, I'm going to be talking to people from Microsoft. They didn't know stuff about technology. But I thought, since I'm the Associate Director for Access Technology, I thought that accessibility would be a good topic. Obviously, since it's been, right at the front at the division keynote this past week. And I think it's a good opportunity to kind of look back a little bit at the history of accessibility, especially with the deaf and hard of hearing community, and see where it goes. Been at NTID for 15 years, and I've been through quite a journey, bouncing around different places, and I really love working with the Center on Access Technology because we have opportunity to address accessibility issues within the college and really innovate on ways we can improve access for deaf and hard of hearing students in the classroom, in meetings, and elsewhere. So when we explored on the idea of automatic speech recognition, we did that because the demand for services for interpreting and captioning was just skyrocketing. And to the point where it was unsustainable. We just couldn't meet the needs of students. And that was really important to us. And we started looking into automatic speech recognition. And it's not with the intention of replacing people. It's with the intent of fulfilling unmet needs. Okay? Last fall, we had about 6% of classes that were not covered. And that was about like 128 classes. The 6% sounds small, but the 128 classes are not covered. That's a lot. And so we wanted to make sure the students not only have the service, but also have the freedom to put together whatever schedule they wanted. And that was important too, because normally we would just assign classes to, whatever section we felt was the best fit for the student. But they were limited to that choice only. So if they wanted another teacher, they couldn't get the service. So we wanted to add the freedom for the student to pick whatever they wanted. I'm going to show you a short video about kind of the work that we've done in the Center on Asset Technology.
Oh.
There's no voice.
Who's that?
So that's a little bit of what we do. We work with students, and that's the part that I really like doing on a day-to-day basis. We just explore opportunities to help, build some kind of functional equivalent. And for me, it's kind of like a personal journey because I grew up as a deaf person. I was born deaf. But it wasn't until I was the age of 3 that my parents discovered that I was deaf. I mean, I have flashbacks of my parents telling me what to do, but I didn't understand what they were talking about, and I just minded my own business. And they were really concerned about my language development and, just the inability to do basic speaking, really. And I just can't really understand why it took 3 years. But for them, they thought I could hear because I did have some residual hearing. And I would respond to noises. When people call out, if I don't have a hearing aid, I would hear a little bit. I would look around. Right now it's a lot worse. But I can imagine that I kind of, fooled my parents into thinking that I could hear, but I might have some other disability, maybe with attention or some kind of cognitive processing going on. But much to their relief, I was just deaf. So, obviously, by discovering I was deaf, they had to do some research. What do I do with a deaf kid? Now, back in the 70s, the resources were kind of quite limited. It's not like they had the internet. They had to depend on people recommending what to do with a deaf child. So the first thing they did was they sent me to speech therapy. And that's where I had to learn all the different sounds of the letters, They put like a wooden stick in my mouth and, trained me on how to speak stuff. But I couldn't hear every letter in the alphabet, especially the S sound. That was the most difficult letter for me to hear, was the S. I mean, it wasn't until maybe about 4 years ago that I could finally hear the S sound, believe it or not. Okay, my hearing aid wasn't sophisticated enough to process this down and compress it into the range where I could hear. Now that I can hear, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But I couldn't hear it for a very long time. And it became very difficult for me to distinguish words that relied a lot on S sound. I rely a lot on lip reading. And that's really what I depend on the most. Sound being added on top of that does help. But lip reading is really the key difference for me. English was my first language. I didn't learn sign language first. I learned English. I learned to speak English. I learned to write English. I was in an intensive, writing program to catch up on my language development. And my teachers mostly just talk. I had an FM system right here. And, they would have a dedicated microphone that would go directly into the system that I'm wearing. So as I started, English was my first language, and then it wasn't until later that I learned sign language. Some of you know about this called the degenerative syndrome. It's a common occurrence, in the deaf and hard of hearing population due to barriers and equal access to communication, especially in childhood. So when we sit down, all of a sudden my entire family just starts talking really fast. And there's a lack of language for me. And when I was young and growing up, it was just very difficult for me to just catch on. I would stare and I would just watch, and sometimes I would just wait for certain words to come up and try to latch on. So just sitting at the dinner table, sometimes my family would just laugh, and I would just say, what are you laughing about? Often I would get responses like, oh, I'll tell you later, or they give me they'll try to restare, but it's not funny. And that was the life that I grew up in. So at a certain point in my life, I was kind of socially awkward because I didn't know how to talk with people. I didn't have that kind of development, that social development. And it was a challenge. So it's one of the things that I never really looked forward to was dinner time. But that should have been the time that all families look forward to, right? And that's something that we, I would love that one day that I could be a part of something like that and really enjoy and laugh and be a part of conversations. I don't have that yet today. I'm hoping that someday I will. And because of that, I always finish my dinner first. Always. But they never let me get out. I always had to sit and wait. I always had second, maybe third. I have a pretty good metabolism. I grew up around what we call non-deaf people, but we call it hearing people. And I had hearing friends all my life. I was in a relatively small town. There weren't a lot of deaf people around. And it was tough because sometimes my friends did not realize how deaf I was. I mean, I had to learn to speak. I tried to speak. I tried to teach them to sign, but they said, oh, you speak fine. I can understand you. You're fine. And at one time, they came and they whispered into my ear. And I was moving away, and they kept coming toward me, kept trying to whisper. I felt puffed of air. I was trying to look, trying to read his lips, kept coming toward me, like he was hunting down my ear. When that was happening, that friend who was hunting me down, his mom started the whole thing. She said, don't you realize your friend is deaf? He's trying to read your lips. He was like, but it's funny. But it just shows the environment that I grew up in. I'm sure it's not so much different from other experiences of deaf people as well. I was a great head nodder, okay? You try to engage me in a conversation when I was a kid or a teen, I was pretty good, okay? I watched my dad, as he talked with other people, he would nod too. No, I observed him. And I tried to mimic that and say, I could do the same thing. Until, of course, they asked me a question. I'm like, what? What did I say yes to? But I realized that later in life, that the more I talk, the more that people assume that my hearing loss isn't so bad. And I became a little frustrated later on. You know, you become a teen, your hormones get out of control, you do crazy things, okay? And I did some crazy things, and I'll tell you in a minute. So, I got called to Who's Your Boy State, where you learn about government, okay? And, didn't pick up, right. And while I was there, they had explained about the government system in the state. And they said, you know, the highest office you could run for was governor. I said, that's what I'm going to do, go for the governor position. But they said, well, you have to earn the trust of other people. You have to get their vote. And I said, I had to get the vote? Come on, just put me up there. So, but I was a pretty ambitious teenager, and I decided to do it. I convinced people. I had to talk with people and try to convince them to vote for me. So I actually became the governor candidate for my own party. Okay? So that was pretty cool. Until they told me, okay, now you got to give a 5-minute speech in front of 1,000 people, and you got to be part of a debate. What? And I was just shaking. I was shaking like crazy. I had to rehearse my speech. And I delivered my speech, and it went well. Until it was the debate time. During the debate, as I was answering some of the questions, I saw something trying to get my attention. And it's this one person up in the front row, and he was waving his hand. Now, I was up here, and he was down there, and I could barely see him. But when he got my attention, I looked down, and he pointed to his ear and said, there. He couldn't hear me. There I was just like distraught. I was just like, my confidence was gone that very second. And I realized if I can't have the basics of communication, if I can't communicate with other people, who am I kidding? That's how I felt at that time. So I was sent to the school for the job. And I had what you would call culture shock. So I was in a school where most of the kids in my school would have a voice similar to mine. They were stuttering a little bit, but when I was sent to a deaf school, everybody stuttered, and really, really fast. And I was just like, what? And they just, like 100 miles per hour in sign language, and I couldn't catch it. And I was just like, and I got picked on because I couldn't catch on. I got picked on a whole year until finally a new kid came in, and they started picking on him. But I felt my whole world was upside down, to be honest. This is a different world, to be honest, okay? Just, you're used to people talking, and then you get to a place where nobody talks. Everything's quiet. You may hear people like, whoo, or stomping on the floor, trying to get attention. I was like, what is that? Okay? And they had, they turn on the lights, they turn it on and off to get the attention of everybody in the room. I'm like, why are you doing that? I didn't understand. So, but I did transition at some point, and it just became one of the best years of my life. I got involved in basketball, baseball, football, things that I never would have been a part of if I had stayed in a school system that my brother went through. And I ended up being the president of student council, class president. So I was the most popular kid in school. But I was a different person. I had what we would call a deaf identity. And what that meant is that a person accepting that there is nothing wrong with being deaf. I felt, growing up, that being deaf, there's something wrong with me. But being in that world transformed my attitude, my mentality, and understanding that it's okay. That's not going to stop me from being able to achieve in other areas. And that's something that I would never forget. Never look at deafness as a negative. And maybe some of you may have heard, but when Gallaudet University protested to get their first deaf president, okay, because they wanted somebody who could relate to them. And when they finally had a deaf president, he said, I can do anything but hear. And that was a powerful statement at the time. That inspired generations of deaf and hard of hearing people to believe in themselves. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of innovation related to accessibility for deaf and hard of hearing. And some of it is very interesting for me. Some of it I never knew. Back in the early 20th century, there's a guy named William Shaw who was an inventor and who was deaf. Okay? He invented quite a bit of things. He never patented them. I don't know why. Maybe he didn't know about the patent system, but it didn't stop him from inventing stuff. He invented an alarm clock that would, shake the pillow. And I think that was cool. I mean, back in the early 20th century, I don't use a bed shaker anymore, okay? Because it scares the life out of me every time. I do something more gradual. He also he came up with a telecommunications device, and I'm going to show you in the next slide. But he also came up with a doorbell lighting system. And I am ashamed to see what we have today, because what he invented is way better than what we have today. What we have today, when you ring the doorbell, the light flashes white, especially in my office, okay? The only problem is that my fire alarm also flashes white too, okay? You can't tell, okay? And they normally put it in the worst place in the room, okay? 2 weeks ago, we had a fire alarm in my lab. 70% of us didn't even see the alarm. The others, they thought it was the doorbell. They were just ignoring it, hoping that somebody else would answer the door. It wasn't until my wife here, I was asking, what's that noise over there? She said, no, it's you. It's on your end. Like on my end, I looked up, there was the fire alarm. That's horrible. That's shameful. So he came up with a doorbell that had different colors. A color for the front door, a color for the back door. So green and orange. That's brilliant. Okay? That was in the early 1900s. Why can't we do that today? This was the first talkless telephone system. Okay? You notice where he's standing. Right above him, you see all these light bulbs. They're marked with letters. Each light bulb has a letter on top of it, A, B, C, D. And he would hook up the phone, the telegraph way back. He would take advantage of that. And whatever it hears, the light will come on. A, B, so it's going to be, you have to look at it really fast. Okay? But he had that. So I have people asking me, well, why didn't they just deploy that system back then? I said, have you seen all the wires? That's crazy. I think most of the houses would be on fire if they didn't set it up right. But this guy was pretty cool. He came up with something. But 40 years later, he came up with what we call the TTY, the Typewriter device for the deaf. Okay? But keep in mind that the phone was invented in 1876. Okay? So 88 years later, we finally have something that the deaf and hard of hearing people can use to communicate with other people. So this was the Asteroid device. Okay? Yeah, if you're thinking that's pretty big, it is. Probably like this big. Okay? And it would type on paper. So you have to put the phone on the side of the device. And of course, it didn't take off right away. I mean, who can really lift that thing? But slowly, it started to ramp up. But it was expensive. It was heavy, and I can't imagine the maintenance of that thing. But it did take off for those who could afford it. Then it evolved into something that was smaller. Personally, I had this and I had that. I didn't have that one. I wasn't cool enough. I didn't have a mobile phone. But they were expensive. This one cost $600, okay? And it didn't go as fast as a human could talk. Doesn't matter how fast you typed, it won't go as fast as you typed. It was at a fish speed. And can you imagine the long distance race at the time? How much you had to pay for? When I was in college, I called my friend once a week. My phone bill was $400. I was a college student. I was broke. But this is how we communicated at the time. GA means go ahead, meaning it's your turn to talk. And boy, it was a different world. Closed captions. I have this boxed, okay? It's not something that you'd be proud of to put on top of your TV, okay? It was big, and you turn the channels on it, okay? And the adoption of closed caption was slow. The coverage was limited, and it was very expensive. This was about $800, okay? And that was in the 70s. Can you imagine how much that would cost today? So,
if you wanted to go to a friend's home to watch TV, had to bring this yourself, set it up to TV, and I can tell you it didn't work.
yeah, he's right. So, closed captioning did grow, but it wasn't enough to satisfy deaf people. Actually, it was like a classic chicken and egg problem, where you had the device, but who's going to supply the captions? So we had to rely on the networks to adapt, to actually pay for a service to caption shows, caption news, whatever the deaf people needed to access. But even though it started in the 70s, they didn't really have full access until 1996. Okay, the Telecommunications Act of 1996 compelled the network to provide captioning. And it's still a struggle sometimes. Remember when Netflix came out? The captioning didn't exist. So it's a struggle. It seems that every time there's a paradigm shift, something's missing. And that thing is accessibility. Oh, Matt. Okay.
Don't read it. Don't read it.
When HDMI came out and it was promoted as the future of digital connections, there was one problem. It did not support closed captions. Can you believe it? It was not factored in, and the community was left behind while HDMI was gaining popularity. So the problem was that the design was flawed. Okay? The line that was supposed to carry the caption wasn't there in the specs. They said, oh, we thought the DVD was responsible to supply the caption, meaning they forgot. So right now we don't have that problem. But again, it shows any chip forward, we take 2 steps backwards. So the role of accessibility in the future, we have to keep fighting for it. But we need to be more proactive in taking into consideration of whatever is new. We need to make sure that everybody can move forward. All right, do you remember when I mentioned that the phone was invented in 1876? That same year, Alexander Graham Bell came up with the idea of what we would call a video phone. Okay? This was his idea. As you can see, this wonderful telephone you're talking to, okay, would somehow miraculously be connected to some kind of film projector. I don't know what he was thinking, pre-internet and all that. But he had this vision of being able to see other people and communicate with them in 1876. Okay? So the aspiration of a video phone was there a long, long time ago. So the World's Fair in 1964, they had the first picture phone, okay? And it would transmit an image once every 2 seconds, okay? I don't know how a deaf person would be able to communicate. See? No, dumb. Anyway, but they came out with it, and they wanted people to use it. This is developed by AT&T, by the way. And they set up different booths in 3 different cities. And they had a line for people to wait to make a picture phone call. Okay? And they thought, oh, it's going to be great technology. People really want to feel like they're part of the future. But it was incredibly expensive. A 3-minute video from New York City to Washington, D.C. cost $15 at that time, which would equate to $120 today for 3 minutes. Now, you can understand why it didn't take off. So they scrapped the plan and said nobody really wanted it. No, nobody wanted to pay that much for it. There's a difference. So, you guys have this? You guys have this? Okay. And this was a video phone that was actually funded by the Federal Communications Commission. And every deaf person who qualified would get it for free. And boy, it really took off. Every deaf person on the planet, really, in this country, wanted one. But you had to have broadband network. Some didn't have it, some did. And you had to have a TV. So if you have both, yay, you qualified. You get this. It was really cool. 30 frames per second, clear video. It's very crisp, easy to use with the remote. And because everybody had it, we started calling each other. Can you imagine how different it was from typing something to actually seeing a person for the first time through a call? It was life-changing. For me, I made calls through a relay service, and I actually see a person standing for me. And the time that it took to have a conversation was quick, a lot faster than typing. So, do you remember when Apple came out with FaceTime? When they announced FaceTime, they featured a deaf person in the video. They knew that a front-facing camera on a smartphone would be very important for deaf people, and they were right. If you mingle with the deaf and hard of hearing community, you'll see most of them have an iPhone. Because they were the first to come out to make it simple to make phone calls. That's number one rule. You gotta keep it simple. But because everybody had it, they could just call each other. It felt like they were making an actual phone call on a mobile phone without jumping through hoops. Oh, I gotta open up an app. Do you have an account? No, yes. They just want to call people. They want to feel like everybody else. So, I have worked on various projects related to accessibility. Number one was the Storybook apps that I worked on in collaboration with Gallaudet University. It's a bilingual app that fosters English and sign language. The average deaf person who comes into college has a 7th grade reading level. 7th grade. So access to literacy is key for deaf children. And we're still fighting the good fight, trying to make sure that they have appropriate access to education, to make sure that they are, ready for college, ready to achieve. And if we can't give them the basics of reading and writing, then what are we trying to do? So for me, I thought this was really important. For them to read, and if they weren't sure, they could click on the word, and the word would come up in sign language. And they were like, I get it. We just announced this product about 2 weeks ago, and I took this picture yesterday. This was in the Glass Museum near the Space Needle. So I went in, and seriously, I saw this. There's enhanced audio tour. I'm out. I can't hear anything. So that is exactly what we were trying to solve. By having a deaf person scan the code, they have access to videos in sign language. They can not just have to hear, people can listen to it as well, but we included sign language. We included different languages, Chinese, Japanese, Russian. We made it accessible not just for deaf and hard of hearing, but international visitors as well. So we're trying to set up an example of what it's like to build an inclusive experience for our people in museums. So we showcased this 2 weeks ago. I got 5 museums contacting me to set one up in their museum. I'm looking forward to it. This one is a very interesting project. RIT has a crew team, and we have deaf athletes on that team. But the problem is that their coach gives voice commands to the team to be in sync with everybody else. Whether you have to go left, right, go faster, slower. But for a deaf person, what are they going to do? They're going to watch what's in front of them. Okay? They don't necessarily watch the person sitting right in front as 2 persons down. because you have left, right, left, right, left, right. So every second counts. So if you're supposed to stop, you need to stop immediately. So we devised a system that uses a localized automatic speech recognition system. No internet required. And it had to be less than 30 milliseconds. It had to be fast. We made it. So in the test lab, we made it. But we're actually going to put it into competition this summer. It's going to be the first time ever. I'm really excited about it. But we didn't just put up words. We combined it with colors. We combined it with motion to help wherever we could to give them a competitive advantage. Theater. Theater is very important to the deaf and hard of hearing community, especially at NTID, where they do a tremendous job putting together performances in sign language, spoken English. But we're trying to figure out ways to make it more inclusive. And I have just been assigned this project a few weeks ago. And I am looking into ways to make captioning appear wherever the person is on stage. I told them how much it costs, the barking at the moment, but I think we're going to do it. But the goal is that people can have access to wherever they're sitting, watch and see captions show up above a person without having to look to another screen that's way off stage and they miss the whole thing over there. That's how they're setting it up on Broadway. They have a screen way off stage. You pay good money to watch the performance, and all you can do is look there to keep up. Okay? So that, for me, is not acceptable. I think we can do better. I know we can do better. And of course, we're doing work with Will and his team on implementing speech recognition in the classroom. We started off with 5 classes last fall, and now we just finished the semester with 9 classes. We anticipate possibly 20 next fall. Are you ready for 20? Okay. But the buy-in is there. The students want it. If they can have both interpreting and captioning, they want it both. Normally, the policy states you can't have both because of resources. But because we have the machine, they're willing to give them both. So it's changing. All right. So, talking about the role of accessibility in AI. So, artificial intelligence should have some kind of role when it comes to accessibility. As you started, I did a demonstration with Harry Shum at the Build conference. I was really, really nervous because of the complexity of the system and the echo in the room. It was, I was just really like, but when I got up on stage and Harry started speaking in Chinese, and everybody was like, "Oh!" Just like that. I was like, "Wow!" They really loved what they saw. So he and I went back and forth, and it was pretty cool. Harry has a way of making you feel at home when you're on date. Okay. But being able to communicate with him that I couldn't do otherwise is amazing. That's the power of artificial intelligence. We're just starting. It's going to get better. Despite what this shows, I know this is going to be better. In 5 years, well, who knows, but it will get better. But I think we have the ability to process data that's all around us. What we see and what we hear. For me, I can't hear much. And sometimes my wife, when it's dark at night, she says, I hear something. I'm like, I can't help you. Okay? I would love to be able to help her identify what she's hearing, but I can't. And I hope that someday artificial intelligence will help with that. So artificial intelligence I see as having multiple roles in the future. One, talk about ambient intelligence. Okay? Right now, there is a shift to people wanting to have something to talk to, I guess, in their own home. Maybe they're lonely, maybe they want somebody to talk to, maybe they don't know how to turn on the light, I don't know. The system's getting more complex. But this one here has zero accessibility value for us. We talk to it, and then it talks back. Where did it stay? I don't know. Okay? So this is another example of us being left out. How can we be a part of this? You see, Amazon released the Echo Show. I have one in my house. Okay, I will admit that. Actually, pretty cool. It understood me about 80% of the time, which is not bad. But the cool thing is what it shows on the screen. I can see what it's telling me. Okay? I do have Cortana in my house too. The Invoke. She understands me a little bit better, but I can't understand her half the time because she talks back. She has no screen. The screen is a huge difference maker. I will tell you that right from the start. Without a screen, I can't benefit from it. And also, it helped to know what my kids are asking. It really does. They're asking, Alexa, whatever, and I want to see. What are you asking? To make sure that some good stuff. Now, here's the thing. I got an email from Amazon just yesterday. I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but they're asking me to be on the accessibility council for this. I don't know yet, but it sounds really exciting. I want it to be accessible. There's no way to type or whatever, just voice command only. Maybe that's the point. For people to just give voice command. I'm sure we would love to have sign language recognition someday. But just having the screen does make a difference. We need to start thinking about having accessibility intelligence. And that's something that I feel is really, really important. When I first started seeing AI, I was truly amazed, how it could enhance the accessibility for a blind person around them. To be able to describe in detail of what's around was astounding. And I was thinking, it would be cool to describe in detail what's around me, what sound is around me. If something's beeping and I don't know about it, I want it to tell me. Something's beeping over there. Or it's the laundry machine. So, going back to my talk about captions, have you noticed since we had captions, nothing's really changed with captions. We still have white letters on black box. Well, yeah, you can customize it with blue, yellow, but it's the same. It's just raw text. Where's all the other information about, he's whispering? Why don't they make the letters smaller? Or if he's angry, make it bigger. Or change the colors. Or show it that we know that this person is joking. Deaf people have a hard time telling if a person is joking or not. Sometimes I have a hard time. And I would call that a different kind of captioning, Caption 2.0 or something. But we can use the artificial intelligence to help us. He's saying that quietly. Or he's saying it as he's angry. Okay? That will really make a difference. Also, one thing that bothers me a lot is when I'm flying. You go to the airport, there's a lot of talking. I have no idea what they're saying. Flight delayed. I have no idea. Change the gate to be fixed. All the information, I'm just sitting there, it's happening. Or I'm in the plane, and the pilot may say something that I had no idea. I'd get up and, I was supposed to stay seated. Okay? We don't have access to that. I was just on a flight on JetBlue. They turned off what I was watching on this nice monitor, right? And they had a blue line. It said PA announcement. What? The whole thing was black. I'm like, I'm just waiting for some kind of caption to appear. Nothing. Just a PA announcement. And you talk for a minute or two. I had no idea. Luckily, I have my wife with me, but I can't count on her being with me 100% of the time. So, that's frustrating because it can be tense flying. And it's not a time that I feel like I'm relaxing. It's a time where I feel like I'm in a hurry. I want to get on the flight and get going. Augmented Intelligent. If you look at that picture, yes, that's my wife right there. But we have experimented having interpreters remotely in the classroom. So she could see everything that I'm looking at. And while the teacher was writing on it, a lot of time he said, this protocol, this, that, what's this, what's that? I don't know what it is. The cool thing was that she could interact with me and say, this is this, this is that. And I could move her anywhere that I want. And this is cool, okay? I think this has tremendous value to giving me access. Think about it. Suppose I'm taking nuclear physics. I know nothing about that. But I want to have like the best interpreter possible. It's hard to find one. But there's an interpreter 2,000 miles away. I want that interpreter in my classroom to help me to learn the best that I could. Give me the best. So, augmented intelligence. I want to have the ability to look at Will and see what he's saying. I want the computer to be intelligent enough to know that if I'm looking at evil, I want to see what he's talking about. Look at him, pick up what he's talking about. Did they say evil?
Yes. Evil.
At least it's consistent. Okay, the road forward. Inclusive design must start from the beginning in any project. Sometimes you have this great idea and like you want to move, but ask yourself, how can you include others? How can you make your idea be more acceptable? Beware of disability stimulation, meaning pretending to be deaf, pretending to be blind, pretending that you are in a wheelchair. I appreciate when people do that because they want to know more, but you can't really have the full experience of what it's like to be a deaf person. All the adjustment I had to go through life, the things that I have to put up with. And remember when I talked about deaf identity? You know, a person who would stimulate a deaf person would say, oh, I understand what he's going through. I feel so bad. A deaf person said, I'm okay. I can still do it. I just can't hear. Just give me access to hear. I'm okay. No? And these are different. And I went to a class where the teacher was describing how to do disability stimulation. I said, no, don't do that. Work with us. Include us. We can give you the best feedback possible. So if you have ideas for projects and you want to get feedback from a deaf and hard of hearing person, include them. Include them from the beginning. Say, Ted, what's your idea on this? If you're nervous about what he's going to say, that means your idea is really.
I just
Really?
don't make stupid jokes, that's the problem.
So when you design for disability, it often sparks innovation that you never thought before. Think about it. You're forcing yourself to think harder. To think, how can I better include those people that I want to be involved with? It will challenge you to think harder and to be more clear on the intent of what you are pursuing, of what you're designing. So I read something that Jenny, she stated in an article this morning, I read it, and said if you design for a person with disability, you create better stuff for everybody. And that's 100% true. And this is very important. It is not an obligation. It is a mission. If you see it that way, you see it as something that you really like, you're so passionate about, you want to accomplish this. When I was at the conference, I saw that in a lot of people at Microsoft. And I really I noticed a difference. People really wanted my opinion on stuff. They said we really value it, and that's something that I didn't think would ever happen at a company like this. But the attitude that kept very healthy. And it's something that I truly appreciated. And I didn't hold anything back. And they took it. They said, we want more. We want you to be part of our group. So I got put into 3 groups, which is fine. But that's very inspiring to see. It leads you to the next one. The attitude is everything. It doesn't matter what you're doing. The deaf and hard of hearing community know right off the bat if you are sincere or not. Okay? We're pretty good at reading your face. We're pretty good at reading your body language. Because I can't tell by your voice, but I can tell by the language, by the energy, the vibe. And I felt all the good things at the conference. And that's really important because when Will responded to that first email, my team at NTID were like, he responded within 24 hours? Okay? We had worked with IBM, we had worked with Google. It's like pulling teeth. But Will and his team have been very responsive, restore the energy, the passion, the drive to make this happen. I know this is screwed up today, but I'm not afraid to try. If I'm afraid to try, then this would never have happened. I want a baseline. I want to challenge the system to be better. I want you guys 2-3 years down the road to see and say, wow, progress has been made. And I could have just stopped this immediately after I saw the word math. But I don't want to be that kid at the Hoosier Boys state where I just felt defeated. I'm not going to feel that way anymore. That's okay. I have a deaf voice. That's okay. I'm proud to be deaf. Okay, just want to make sure you didn't say deaf. But I never felt I had to walk on eggshells with Will and his team. Never once felt that way. I felt that way with IBM. Okay? They thought they were perfect. How little they know. But needless to say, we didn't continue that relationship. We wanted somebody who would work with us, who wasn't afraid to get our feedback. And well, you got plenty. But in the end, it was all good. And for us to be able to put it in 9 different classes this past semester is a testament to the effort of your team. And that's the power of having the right attitude. And the last slide I want to bring up that you all know already is this. I thought it would be a fitting end to the presentation. I've heard this several times during the conference. The Microsoft employees that they want to empower every person. And I wasn't just impressed by how many said it, but how they believed you. And truly, I'm honored to be in a place that have proclaimed this mission. And it said every person, and that includes a person like me, everybody in this room. I just cannot wait to continue the work with Microsoft and produce a stronger collaboration with the company. And I think that Will and his team are lucky to collaborate with us too at the Rochester Institute of Technology, because we have 1,250 deaf and hard of hearing students with 15,000 hearing students. There's no better place on earth to find ways to bridge the gap between the two communities. And I'm hoping that Translator will be one of those solutions. So, because together we can empower everyone, right? Thank you.
Do I need to speak into a microphone or?
Well, it would be better if you talked into a phone, because the captions will come up on the screen. They'll work reasonably well for your voice. For whatever reason, we were really struggling with Brian's voice today. I just want to point out that Brian is actually using this in the class. So you're seeing this and like, well, how is this even usable? But if you go and listen to what he's teaching in the classroom, he's using this and it's transcribing fairly accurately. We're getting around an error rate of around 19% on classroom content, and 19% is usable. My voice is around 15%, to give you a sense. So it's approximating my voice.
Okay. How do you handle multiple people in one meeting?
Repeat the question.
How do you handle multiple people in the same meeting?
Okay, I'm going to have my wife interpret for me. So as you can see here on the screen, you can control.
Press the microphone. You have to
Press and hold the whole time?
Yeah.
Okay, let's try this again. So if you want audience participation, you can turn unmute, and you can unmute the audience so that people are able to participate. So if one person tries talking and another tries to join in, you'll see it underneath each other and the color changes. You can see it says Brian, it's my phone that she's using right now.
And then I can talk at the same time, so I can follow up, and you'll see that it should show my captions showing as well. And then we can actually go back and forth so you get the captions from both individuals. It's not as cool as what was shown on Monday at Build with the Princeton device, which I think is very interesting, because you can have multiple people speaking at the same time using the same microphone array. Here we're simulating that with phones.
Okay, I've got first lecture this conversation, so anyone can watch, you can talk into this. This is a microphone now for this.
Yeah. You can try talking into it, Ted.
All right, let's see how well this does with my voice now. If it works for me, it won't work for anyone.
I have a quick question. So what does the training
You're talking-
look like for people who want to like train it for their voice?
Try pushing the button. Pushing the button and
Yeah.
talking at the same time. Yeah. Push and hold. Yeah.
Yeah, crash. Sorry. Okay. Is it working?
Oh,
Okay, working.
yeah, it's working.
So what does the training process look like for people who want to train this for their voices?
Yeah, so the training process for training for different voices. So what didn't come out in the talk today, so at Rochester, one of the things they're doing is teaching fairly technical classes that have complex vocabulary. So one of the fundamental parts of the PowerPoint add-in, the presentation translator, is the adaptation to the vocabulary of the slide deck. So that's one of the reasons it's so popular and so well used, is because all the technical words are coming out. That's done automatically through PowerPoint. The acoustic adaptation that's adapted to Brian's voice, which again didn't seem to work very well today, uses a different model. We have to basically train it on transcribed content of his voice. So he did two things to help us prep this model. Number one, he was teaching classes, and we transcribed that content. So it's about an hour and a half of that content. And then we also had about an hour of the class content and about an hour and a half of him reading documentation on programming languages, which is what he teaches. So it was in the right domain, and then we trained the model on that. So part of the reason that this may work well in the classroom too is because what he's teaching in the class, we've actually adapted the model not only to his voice, but to the content that he teaches.
In fact, you can do it yourself by going to cris.ai.
Right. Thanks for saying that. I should have mentioned that. Speech service.
I have a question more about the interpersonal side of teaching. You mentioned something that you really care about is not just making sure your deaf students have accommodations and what they need, but then kind of also bridging the gap between students who are deaf and students who are hearing. Do you do any of the training for that? Like, what is that process like? Because I'm sure some of the students have never interacted with someone who's deaf before.
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. We do have some training that happens in the classroom. They give students, really it's just a couple minutes of training. But what they try to do at RIT is the teachers will explain how the system works. Like the teacher puts on a headset and they encourage the students to do a little bit of practice. They'll do like, you can talk into it like what we're doing now, or you can even type in questions. So I was there in one of the first classes, and it was really cool. It was a class with 230 kids, and then it was like an auditorium. And it was pretty cool to see a lot of students joining in. They were texting, and you can see it come up on the screen. And one of the funny thing is that they were using pseudonyms. So it's kind of hard to tell like who's saying what. But the teacher was using that for participation. So she would ask a question and she would unmute the audience, and then the answers would start rolling in. And she can't tell who really is saying anything, but the responses were coming in on the screen. So that's what we have so far. Now this coming fall, we're hoping to be doing a training with all freshman students who come to the RIT campus so they can learn more about how to use the translator. And that would be part of their like new student orientation. So we're hopeful that we can set something up like a small activity where they would have one deaf person in each group, and then they would take turns like talking, having a group conversation. So that's one of my goals of having this transform the community. And I'm passionate to see more of those opportunities
That's doing
available.
really well with your voice now.
What was that, Ted? I missed that.
That is doing very well with your voice now.
It's an interpretive voice. It's his wife speaking.
Oh,
That was funny.
You're never gonna live that one down.
I was wondering why there was so much lag. Now I know.
Sorry. I noticed that sometimes there is a lag. So I was just curious, is it more, can you tell me more about that?
There's two reasons. Sometimes there's network issues and stuff like that. Part of it is actually programmatic. As you're recognizing speech, there's multiple hypotheses that are active, and you don't want to distill one right away. So if there's a little bit of a lag of like 1 or 2 seconds while it's kind of creating that hypothesis, then it gets more set. But there are multiple levels too. There's like this notion of a partial transcript that will show, and you'll see sometimes it will rewrite, and then it will be fixed, and then it's set in stone.
So,
I didn't misspeak.
We could show the hypothesis, but it would be too jarring.
What's that?
okay, so could the phone,
Oh, yeah, that's a good, let me just, there was another comment that Chris made. We could show the hypotheses as they're active. So you'd have a jumble of stuff happening on the screen as it's changing and setting, but it would be too jarring and too confusing. So it was really a programmatic decision.
And in usability, we found that this was not accepted by the readers.
Exactly.
okay, so I was also thinking of, well, you had mentioned something about that sometimes the phone might have network problems or other issues. So is the lag, I'm sorry.
In the front end or the back end? Or?
Oh, is it on the front end or the
Back
back
end.
end? So how often will you see that type of problem on the front end while you're using it?
You mean while you're on the phone?
Like, is the phone better than, say, a PC?
I guess it depends on what's going on in the back end. Like Will said, it's working to try to put things together.
As
Are
long
you
as
seeing
this,
how much work the hardware has to do?
as long as the signal gets to the service, it's going to be pretty much the same amount of time. But obviously, we can't control network issues. Right now, I'm on my data plan for my phone. This phone, well, that's your phone, right? Amy, so you're on a data plan as well. One of the phones is on the same Wi-Fi as this. So, I mean, we have different, and this is CorpNet, so I'm pretty sure this is fast. So it really, a lot of it is decision-making about not wanting to confuse the users with having too much jumbled text showing up as I'm speaking or as the person is speaking. Clint has a question.
Is it possible to run the model locally on a phone? At what point will processors get to where the model can be locally and won't have to go do a network hop? And what's the delta in?
Speech recognition can be run locally.
Is it just more accurate when it's in the cloud? Or is there a reason that it just can't always be locally?
It's a very resource-intensive process, and we're running neural models. That's part of the problem. So you need to optimize the neural models to run on a CPU. That's part of the difficulty. We've done that with machine translation. So the machine translation models that I've downloaded locally to this phone are, in fact, neural models running on this phone. But that's a recent advancement, and that has not been applied to speech recognition, I should say, yet.
And we're not working on true text on the phone either.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. So Olivier brought up a really good point. One of the things you're seeing here is a technology that breaks the text into kind of readable chunks to make it look more caption-like, especially after it's done. And that's actually really important. It's actually one of the reasons that Rochester went with us was because of the caption-like output. It wasn't just a stream of text, it was something that was readable. That technology would also have to be put into speech recognition on the phone too.
Especially when
Exactly
people
right.
speak for 2 minutes without stopping, like Will.
That's me, I just talk and talk and talk.
Yes, that's exactly right. Readability is very important for us. And something that we did evaluate with the other companies I mentioned, it was more of raw data that they were giving us. It was really hard to follow, really hard to read. Like sometimes the numbers, like if they said the year 1965, it would be written out 1965 instead of the numeric value. So, it's really hard to read something like that. Your eyes start to just droop after a while. It's impossible to keep up with that, as opposed to just something that's easy to read. So, if you're doing a search through the transcript, it becomes equally important to be able to find information, because some students might be like, oh, I remember the teacher mentioned something about 1965. So if they're searching for the year and it's spelled out, it's almost impossible to find anything. The readability was really hard too. It's really hard for recollection.
So have you tested it here?
At Microsoft?
Yes.
Yeah,
like for example, I'd like to test it out.
It was fun, interesting. There was a conversation between Katie and Ted and me today, in fact, about this. It's like, why aren't more people using this at Microsoft? And I think there are people using it. So you like the education team, for instance, just about every demo they give, every customer encounter they give, they use this. Jenny's team, the accessibility team, generally, this is one of their hero apps. They talk about this, they show this every time they go out to a customer location. But internally, I think we should be using it more. One of the things that we do pretty regularly with Ted, for instance, so Ted and I work very closely together. I can now say I actually sign a little bit, but a month ago, it was not at all. Yeah. Okay, don't laugh, Ted. But for the most part, it's unusable. So the problem is communicating with Ted when we go out to do something. So our team likes to go to Boardwalk to have a beer on Friday evenings. Ted goes with us now because we all bring our phones and we do exactly what I'm doing right now. All of us are sitting around the table and we just do this. And he has his phone, he can follow along the conversation. You should be using this everywhere. I mean, anyone that needs this, because you're not going to have an interpreter in every single situation. You're not going to have an interpreter when a workman comes to your house and knocks on the door and things like this. Having this technology at your disposal when you need it or when you want it is nice to have. But I mean, no, it's more than nice to have. I mean, Ted, you can ask Ted about it. It's permeated his entire life. He uses it everywhere.
To come back to your question about why more at Microsoft, one of the issues you've seen was at the beginning, where you see how long it took to make it work. And usability, adapting to particular scenarios, that's going to be very important. And with PowerPoint, we did a huge step for the presentation scenario, but still, for instance, if you're connected to an audio system, it's still not perfect. So the UX part is going to be super important. That's why we try to get into Ready, into Inspire, and all the Microsoft conferences, and it's been super hard.
Yeah, I also want to add something else that's pretty important. As a deaf person, you may be more interested and more be like, hey, why isn't everybody using this? And that's how I am too. But to be honestly, if I wasn't a part of this, this wouldn't be happening at RIT either. Because I am there, I want to see this happen, I want to see things change. I'm taking steps to make sure that happens. So that's part of my role. And one of the things I have to tell you is when Will came to Rochester, we had 3 deaf people and Will. And guess what? The interpreter did not show up. They went to the wrong place. And we were like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? Should we, like, this is supposed to be a dinner, should we just eat real quick and then leave? But you know what, we ended up staying for 3 hours, and we all talked around the table because we were using Translator. So that is one of the essential ways that this can be used. So tell your colleagues, like, hey, here's this app, let's try using it. So I can remember, I don't know about Will, but I was a little bit concerned about trying this out. And I just said, you know what? If I want to convince people to use it, I have to be willing to eat my own dog food, quote unquote. So I would suggest go ahead, just try it.
Well, I think that's why I was so curious about understanding how you're drawing the bridge between, students who have experience with this, who, are deaf themselves and understand what it's like to live life with certain barriers, and then for the other students who have no idea what these barriers are. Because I myself, I have no disability and I work on accessibility, and the first couple of months was just building empathy, because the minute you get it, you understand the importance of it. You understand that closed captioning is not merely a convenience, but a very important thing. Oh, so no.
Just press it continuously.
Oh, I'm pressing the microphone.
Oh, okay. It a glitch.
Well, anyways, my question is, like, I really am interested in seeing where the training nets out, because once you're able to move the needle emotionally, like, there's no argument needed for, oh, you should do this for X, Y, and Z reasons. People just get it. And I guess I'm more interested about that, especially as a product marketer.
That's a great question. A lot of the students who pick RIT do it because they like that there's a deaf community there. Even though they may have never been exposed to it, they think it's fascinating and interesting. And we need to be able to recruit those students to be almost like some kind of ambassadors to disseminate this app and this idea. So we haven't really tested it with small team meetings yet, or even with one-on-one. Mostly it's been used in the classroom. So it's been a little bit, I guess, passively used to date. But I am interested in exposing it to all the incoming freshmen, because we got to start somewhere. And I think that they are a great group. It's a great opportunity because they're all coming to campus for the first time. They already have an orientation program. Why not just add this in there and remind them, like, while you're here on campus, you're going to see deaf people. And it's going to start to build the empathy starting freshman year is what I want to see. That you can communicate with other students. And here is one of the apps, one of the ways you can do it. Some people say, oh, I wish I had learned sign language. I hear that all the time. You don't have to know sign language. There are other ways to communicate, and using the app is one of them.
Good question.
I think we're kind of running low on time. Actually, I think we're running way over on time. I did want to say one thing that's kind of just one follow-up about the inclusive design issues and all that. And we're kind of seeing this in miniature at Rochester also. So in one of the classes, this was evolutionary biology last fall, which is a very technical class. You needed the technical vocabulary adaptation, otherwise it would have just been a total fail. There was one student that had requested access, so they had an interpreter there and they were using the captioning. So they had both on for that one student. In the second week, that student dropped the class. So you had 25 other students in this class, all hearing. And the captions was like, well, the professor's like, well, I'm just going to turn this off now because the student that wanted this isn't here anymore. And she nearly had a riot. It was like, no, don't turn it off. We are using this. Leave it on. And they left it on for the rest of the term for an entirely hearing class. So what the president of the National Technical Institute for the Deaf wants to do, based partly on this data, this one data point, is have it on in all of the classes. So that any person, anywhere on campus, hearing or deaf, it doesn't matter, can walk into any class they want to. If someone recommends, go to this lecture, go to this class, what have you, it's on. Everyone benefits.
You can even follow another class by being in another class.
Give the code for that.
Automatic note taking.
We should end it there. I think, oh, go ahead. Ted had a question. Sorry.
Automatic note taking.
There is that aspect too. Yeah. So we're going to end it here because we're way over time. I want to thank Brian again for coming all the way from Rochester to Seattle to see us, and you were great at Build. That was awesome to see your demo, and really good to see you again, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.